All right, so yeah, my name is Jan Oledan, and I've been working with Tristan Reed from the World Bank on a project which looks at the factors affecting rice prices in the Philippines, which is where I'm originally from. So a bit more on the background and problem. So the Filipino government has been heavily involved in crafting rice trade and market policy in the country, from kind of procuring imports, distributing, and promoting research and development in terms of rice farming. There have been very, I would say, lofty goals of self-sufficiency in the country, but ultimately still a net importer of rice today. So I was motivated to look at this specific topic for several reasons. The first, it's kind of like a way for me to reconnect back from where I'm from, and I think that's very important in terms of doing studies in the field of economics. Second, my main interests are in development, but I'm slowly kind of encroaching into the industrial organization space. So maybe I'll do that for my PhD. And third, there was a very recent policy shift in the country where the market instrument changed from a quantitative restriction to one that applied tariffs on rice imports instead. And of course, this was met with various reactions from different groups. So policymakers said, this is great. We have more revenue. We can set up this rice fund to help farmers who may be negatively affected by this policy, and we can kind of spur more research and development towards self-sufficiency. But then a lot of small-scale farmer and domestic industry groups were saying, no, this is bad because, you know, with a sudden influx of imports, prices of rice that we can charge will go down and ultimately hurt our livelihoods in the foreseeable future. So this was very recent, and this was passed just last year, but I kind of wanted to take a step back and look historically, you know, what kind of variables or factors affect rice prices in the Philippines. And I do this through a very simple hedonic pricing model framework. So this key equation is kind of what I use for my analysis. P, the farm gate price of rice in the Philippines by region by month, is my main kind of outcome of interest because I really want to see whether this claim from farmer and small industry groups was true. X represents various covariates affecting demand, and W representing covariates affecting marginal costs. So a lot of these, pretty much all of these variables were taken from World Bank open data and also the government of the Philippines after quite a lot of emailing and calling. But the variables I'm looking at are the tariffs, the global price of rice, the exchange rate to kind of take into account the international markets, harvest volume of rice, the farmer share of prices, which essentially is the percentage of the final retail price that goes back to the farmer's earnings, a dry season indicator, the number of rice mills within a certain area, and then also the average agricultural wage. So in terms of a hypothesis, again, I want to see whether this claim of, you know, tariff coming in has a negative impact on prices, but also I think it's interesting with the number of rice mills variable, which is essentially the number of factories that are processing rice within a given region. I kind of think of this as factories competing with each other, and this might kind of depress the prices for rice. And then I'd also expect the average agricultural wage in places where there's a higher agricultural wage, that farm gate prices are higher to kind of make up for that higher day-to-day costs. So here's just a very simple graphic of rice exports per area cultivated over time, comparing the Philippines to a lot of its neighbors. And you can see at the very bottom in yellow, it's not very exciting there, with a few blips of exports in the 70s and the 80s. Again, this just reiterates the fact that compared to its neighbors, it's still very much a net importer. And here's just one set of results that I'll present just because of time. So column 1 is your standard international price pass-through regression, and then columns 2 through 6 takes into account that within country variation in terms of in explaining the differences in farm gate prices. So interesting to know, we do see this negative coefficient on the tariff. It's not significant, but the relationship is there. Also, another thing that I found interesting from this is the farmer share of prices. So again, this is essentially the percentage of the final retail price that the farmer gets back in terms of earnings. So it appears that in regions where essentially farmers get more, they can charge more for their farm gate price. And I think this is something that's super interesting to kind of look into as some next steps with the project. And then also the coefficient in column 6 on the daily wage, we do see, you know, if there's a region where there's a higher agricultural daily wage, it does seem to appear that farm gate prices are higher. And I also have results on retail prices, but unfortunately, because of time, I don't have those here. And here are the sources that I've used. And thank you so much to everyone who's in this conference right now and who looked at and watched all of our presentations. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the conference.